Okay, so this is a big day today. Yeah, we do have a vote today for the Prop 50 in California.
Right.
Yeah, so all right. Okay,
So you got to make Gavin Newsom happy, right?
uh-uh. This guy, I don't know. He actually his wife just came out and just attacked Trump in very bad way. Disgusting. Disgusting, these people. All right, so let's start our program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is November 4th. Here's my dear friend, Tom Fuentes. Tom, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you. It's so nice to see you, Tom. Yeah, this is a big day today. So before we start our program, I'd like to introduce Tom to my audience. Mr. Tom Fulton's work in FBI for 30 years, and he worked as assistant director of FBI for 5 years, and he's retired now. Once again, welcome, Tom, and thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Sure. So this is a big day today. We have the election in New York. We're going to decide the fate of New York, the big city, the beautiful city, the American city. So this one and the other elections are in New Jersey, Virginia, and in California. So what do you think about the whole situation in New York and the other places that hold election today, Tom?
Well, to start with, let's start with New York. You
Okay.
know, the more the people get to know Mondani, the less
Mhm.
they like him. They know he's a socialist, if not communist. All of the promises he makes, he can't keep.
Mhm.
And you know, what's going to happen if they vote for him, if they think he's going to be able to do any of these things, it'll be free to ride on buses and you can live, your rent is guaranteed and it's locked in place and all of these features. He's going to have New York City run several grocery stores.
Mhm.
These kind of things have been tried all over the world and never worked, but somehow he's going to make it work with no experience in a leadership position anywhere, just a big mouth. So we'll see. Now, on the other hand, I criticize the Republicans, was they got nobody that they could put up against him. Cuomo's an independent and he's a loser.
Mhm.
Sliwa doesn't have a popular vote and he's not experienced in this. He was basically a, guardian angel on the street and trying to help people, but he doesn't have the background. Cuomo has a negative background, and these are the two guys that are going to stop the communists.
Mhm.
So to me, New York is a crazy situation to have this happening.
That's so sad. That's so sad to see New York fall down. So we'll see. Who knows? And I see the new poll that said Romney has 94% of chance to win.
Yeah.
So, well, it's remind me about 2060. Remember when Hillary and Trump have the election, and then the one day before the election, they said Hillary had 90 plus percent.
Yeah, she was what, 5 or 6 or 7 points
Yeah,
ahead and then
mm,
lost. So
right.
the polls, to me, that's another surprising element that with all the sophistication of the pollsters, they still get it wrong over and over and over.
Oh, I know.
So, what they're saying now in New York about Mondani's lead, I can believe that because Cuomo, with the terrible job he did as governor and the scandal that led to him leaving the governor's office, um, so I could understand in that case the reluctance to vote for him or Sliwa. Uh, and then you go to Virginia, where I'm at, and Spanberger is still ahead of Winsome's Earl Sears. And, we think that she's predicted to win by, I don't know what, 6 points or something.
Mhm.
So we'll see if that holds up.
So
Then
that,
to me, the most exciting race anywhere is New Jersey with,
right.
Chitterelli running. He was supposed to lose by a lot. Now it's very close.
Mhm.
So it's hard to say now what's going to happen, whether the Democrats going to pull it out with her reputation or whether he's going to be able to defeat her. So that may be the more exciting race to watch today. And even late tonight, we may not know who won. It may take until 1 or 2 more days to count the votes.
We're counting the votes. Okay, so we'll see. That is very close race, right? In
Yeah.
New Jersey, yeah, and also in California. So yeah, we have last push for no on 50. Voters from California, please vote no on 50. Right. So we'll
Okay,
see.
since you're in California, why don't you explain right now what it really means? What is Prop 50?
Well, actually, the Prop 15 is you can consider it's a grabbing power from people, as simple as that, because the Constitution in California already ruled that the redistrict power is not belongs to the governor, it's belong to the Congress. But Newsom tried to grab these power to himself. So this is
Well,
why we
especially
have
California already had a nonpartisan committee to
exactly
oversee redistricting.
right, right.
And Newsom comes in and says, "Oh no, we don't need them. I'll decide.
Right,
I'll fix it."
right. He actually considered himself as a king. So when California people have the no king protest against Trump, I just feel funny. It's no king in California against Newsom. And also Newsom have his wife to come out to criticize President Trump and the parents of President Trump. It's so ugly, so disgusting. So
Yeah,
yeah, California is out of reach. So just vote no if you want to keep yourself like a free man. Otherwise, here it's like a kingdom. Maybe not to Newsom, but to Democrats.
right.
Yeah, that's the thing. And just think about people from California. Let me, yeah, speak for one more sentence. Think about the price of gasoline. You think about that, and you think which you're gonna vote. So as simple as that. Right now we have about 5.50 per gallon still.
What's
So
interesting about that is that I was stationed in the FBI in California. I was an assistant special agent in charge of the San Francisco division, which
mhm,
covered Northern California.
mhm,
And at that time, in those days,
mhm.
California gasoline was maybe $4 or $5 a gallon more than anywhere else in the country
Right,
because they put all these extra taxes and all of this so that
right,
they could deliver better services, and they never delivered better services. It was
never.
always a disaster except for the price of gasoline. It was
Right.
horrible.
Right. So that's the situation, and uh, of course, Newsom blamed Trump. That's because of Trump. Our gasoline prices is high. Everything is because of Trump. So this
Yeah,
is
because you won't criticize Biden. Oh, Biden was a great president. Biden is the reason those costs even went higher than they were.
right.
But California, like I said, it had always been ballpark $5 a gallon for regular gas.
Mhm.
But how high has it been in the last couple of years for you? What, $8, $9 a gallon, $10 a gallon?
I saw
So
somewhere in
that's not
California.
Trump's doing, that's Biden's doing.
Exactly, exactly. I saw somewhere in Northern California about 2 years ago. It's about 7.50 per gallon.
Yeah.
7.50 per gallon. I'm just curious, what the gasoline price in your place, Tom, right
It's
now?
right around 3. Some gas stations you see 2.99, 2.98.
Uh-huh.
Some are 3.05, but ballpark $3 a gallon.
hmm Great, great. Yeah. So let's talk about daily life, not ideology. So this is the fact. And the talk about New York, Tom, I really want to know that has anything like this ever happened in American history? Like a small region ruled by communists or Muslims. Do we have that situation before?
Not in the biggest city in the country. We have cities right now,
Uh-huh,
whether it's Dearborn, Michigan, or a few others that are basically run by Muslims. They
uh-huh,
want to implement Sharia law. They want to, do all of those things,
uh-huh.
and replace U.S. law with their own law, religious law.
Hmm.
And but this Dearborn or cities like that,
Hmm.
never in a major city, if not the majorest city of all in the U.S., New York City.
Hmm. So, what's the reason behind that something might happen in New York? We don't know the result yet, but let's assume that this guy will be elected as a mayor of New York.
And what's
What?
interesting is just in the last couple of weeks, we've had these various scandals come out about him
Hmm.
and the lies that he's told.
Hmm.
For example, he said that after 9/11, his aunt living in New York was afraid to ride the subway wearing a hijab
Right.
because she might be attacked by anti-Muslim people.
Uh-huh.
Turns out he never had an aunt living in New York City.
Right.
His father had a cousin or something living in Europe somewhere,
Hmm.
never in New York, never rode a subway. It was all a complete lie. And then later, when he took it back and tried to modify it, the second modification was a lie. So he completely just made that story up.
Uh-huh.
Secondly, and probably more concerning than a politician lying, we're kind of used to that. Even Gavin Newsom mentioned that.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, politicians lie. We know that. But, the bigger scandal is it's illegal for a U.S. politician to accept foreign campaign donations. And now it's come up that Mondani has accepted a lot of money from NGOs, non-government organizations, and
Hmm.
other companies affiliated with Soros or Soros
Hmm.
subsidiaries, we'll put it that way.
Hmm.
And now what's going to happen with that? Here that all comes out recently. Is he going to be prosecuted? Who knows? But so far he's getting away with it. And New York City voters, just like in other big cities, the Democratic voters don't seem to mind when their politicians are crooked and lying. Doesn't bother them. So we'll see. We'll see if the lie about his aunt and some of these other issues, if any of that registers, maybe, I don't know. But the other problem, Mondani, the luck that he has going for him is the two opposing candidates, Como and Sliwa.
Hmm.
And those guys just do not have the horsepower. Some people were saying that Sliwa should step out and advise his supporters vote for Como,
Hmm.
and that the two groups of voters together might be able to defeat Mondani. And
Hmm.
Sliwa's come right out and said, "I'm not dropping out, no matter
Right.
what. I
Hmm.
refuse." So,
So we'll see. We'll see. It's so
so we'll
sad.
see. We'll see how much he loves New York City, and that, or now we have seen, and Como's just, unbelievable. Now he's an independent, so it's okay. So all the scandal of sexual harassment and the policies of putting COVID patients in
Hmm.
New York nursing homes,
Right.
killing thousands of people.
Hmm.
It's like, oops, what's the pro? Sorry.
Sorry, it's a mistake, right?
Yeah, made a mistake. Sorry.
Likely.
Yeah. And so the point being that somebody with his level or his lack of level of judgment, he's going to try to compete against Mondani. Say, really, you have just a horrible situation in New York. Now, New York has faced this in the past,
Hmm.
and you go back to where they've had Democrat administrations, one after the other, making crime rampant in New York and all of that. Finally, at one point, how many years ago? 20 years ago, finally, they elect Giuliani because of
Giuliani.
the great reputation he had as a United States attorney for New
Hmm.
York, Northern District of New York, and
Hmm.
that during that time he had all of these cases taking on the mafia, La
Hmm.
Cosa Nostra. And
Right.
so the people thought, okay,
Hmm.
let's go ahead and give him a. So Giuliani gets in,
Right.
and he's in there a certain period of time, but then after him, look who he's been followed by: De
Hmm.
Blasio,
Hmm.
uh, people like that, and that's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a statistic showing that 60% of foreign-born voters vote for Democrats. So we
Yeah.
have more and more foreign-born, like us. We're foreign-born, but 60% of them vote for the Democrats, vote for the Mandani. Um, this is a serious question. This is a problem that we have to look at that and we have to face the problem. So, can we import so many people from foreign countries? Or why these foreign country born voters like to vote Democrats, even though Democrats are doing bad or lie to them in their face, they still vote for them? It's a big question. So are these
Yeah.
people, even though they become a voter, are they really recognize the value of this country? Is this some question that we really ask? Even though maybe it's a political incorrect, but this is a question we need to ask. Do you think we
Well,
can?
I think, when immigration is run the way it's supposed to be,
Mm,
law-abiding, and people come into the country
mm,
like you, like my wife, like friends of my wife, um, and they have to go through all of the strenuous tests along the way to get in.
right.
And, written exams and physical exams and other conditions.
Mhm.
And so when they finally do make it, the extreme pride. And I know just few short years ago when I attended my wife's ceremony here in Northern Virginia to become a citizen, there were hundreds, I don't know, 500 people in the audience becoming citizens.
Mhm.
And at the beginning of the ceremony, they list the countries they're from all
Right.
over the world,
Mhm.
all over the world.
Mhm.
And then in the, gathering of people after the ceremony, talking to many of them, the pride to have finally gotten in, that they're
Mhm.
now a U.S. citizen, part of this country, how fortunate.
Right.
And you didn't hear any revolutionary talk. Many
No.
of them, especially from China, you're
Mhm.
leaving a totalitarian government. You're leaving, you
Right.
know, a difficult situation and coming to the U.S. where you have the opportunity to become wealthy or do whatever you want.
Mhm.
And the people in that audience, and many of them from totalitarian countries
Mhm.
like Russia at the
Mhm.
time. Russia was, had been more totalitarian, um, or China, or some of these other countries
Mhm.
were just so proud that they were now Americans.
Right. Right. But now the immigration, even though they're from these countries, I think the mentality are changing. So we probably need to rethink about the whole processing of who we're going to accept to become a U.S. citizen.
Not just that, but I think even equally important is our educational system.
So,
Because now, even starting in schools at an early age, and the liberal teachers, so you had students over the last, say,
mhm,
20 years, that
mhm,
students go to high school, they have liberal teachers.
mhm,
Students go to college, have liberal professors.
mhm,
And the theory, which usually was true, was, well, when they get in the real world, when
mhm,
they have to compete for jobs, when they have to function,
mhm,
in the community,
mhm,
that'll change. They'll become conservative.
mhm,
And instead, the opposite has happened.
mhm,
Many of them going through that whole system, they don't go in the real world. They become professors at Harvard or
mhm,
Ivy League schools
mhm,
and keep putting out that doctrine, that liberal doctrine.
mhm,
And so people aren't really becoming educated. And when you talk to people, like in my case,
mhm,
when I tell people where I've been during my career in the FBI, going to more than 100 countries, and I'd come back and be with a group of friends at a reception or even other people at a reception,
mhm,
and they would ask me, "Well, where were you?" "Well, I just came back from Croatia."
mhm,
"Oh, never heard of it. Where is that?"
mhm,
And I'd
mhm,
start listing countries that I had been to. Nobody had a clue where that was. If you Name countries even in Europe: Bulgaria, Slovakia,
Mhm.
Slovenia. People couldn't find them on a map if they didn't have the name. And even if they did, so what?
Mhm.
So much less countries in Africa, Asia, South America.
Mhm.
So, people, they don't teach geography to the extent they used to when I was a student. And that
Mhm.
was one of my favorite topics, geography and history, because they go
Mhm.
hand in hand.
Mhm.
And so knowing the history of these countries when I go to them, knowing how they're set up geographically, who's their neighbor, are they
Mhm.
surrounded by other neighbors that are like-minded? Are they
Right.
landlocked? Are they on the ocean? Different things like that. And
Mhm.
many, many people couldn't tell you anything about any other country. And or within the United States. Put a map up with just the outlines of the states and how many states can be named by, high school graduates, let's say, if they haven't been to some of those states. So if
Mhm.
they're going to college or high school, let's say in Nevada, can they find on the map Vermont,
Mhm.
Maine, New Hampshire, places like that if they're from the West? Or if they're on the East Coast, can they name West Coast countries or states or southern states? So that's something that, to me, that's a big measure of how educated somebody is. When I talk to them, if they have any idea of the other countries of the world, where they're at, what they stand for, even generally, and
Mhm.
systems of government, how many can name that? They don't. When I was in school, seventh grade, eighth grade,
Mhm.
freshman in high school, they taught civics. That taught you about our government, the three branches, and all of that, the history of creating our
Mhm.
Constitution and how it functions.
Mhm.
And and I can remember a few years later hearing that, well, they don't teach civics anymore. No need. What? Now teach the civics, the background of how this country came to be, or other countries, what happened in those countries, or how the different wars affected countries in the world. Um, I think it's a tragedy that really high school graduates are not as well educated as they were 20 years ago.
Mhm.
College graduates, the same thing. So I think that that's a tragic situation for our country.
Mhm. Mhm. I really appreciate Tom for you to talking about this topic. I actually have the same feeling about the education. The whole education, the level of the whole education is dropped down so dramatically. I remember when I was in high school, we have to remember the five Great Lakes, the name, the shape, and you have to remember which state are in the neighbor with these lakes.
Right.
Remember, I was in China at that day. So we have to remember the first 100 countries capital in high school in China. So we know the world map very well. It's when I was in high school, I didn't see that right now. I didn't see that right now. And also when I came here, to be honest, I just figured out some people here are just don't know the other country at all. And they really don't care. And so
Right.
this is the problem because you don't have enough information for you. So how can you make a great judgment?
Now, some of that lack of knowledge of the rest of the world actually goes back even further than recent times. If you look at the U.S. population in the 1930s, as Hitler was gaining power, first
Hmm.
in Germany, obviously, and then in Europe,
Hmm.
and when he was killing thousands of people in England with his bombing, and then later takes over France and the rest of Western Europe,
Hmm.
Americans still didn't want to join the war, still
Hmm.
didn't want to back up. We're supposed to be allied with England and the United Kingdom, France.
Hmm.
Didn't matter. We didn't care.
Hmm.
And we didn't care about anybody until Pearl Harbor. And then the mistake that Hitler made is that when Pearl Harbor gets bombed by the Japanese on December 7th, 1941, then the next day, Franklin Roosevelt declares war, has
Hmm.
Congress agree to declare war on the Empire of Japan.
Hmm.
what a lot of people don't realize is that after all the years of US people saying we don't want to go to Europe, um, Hitler and Germany declare war on the United States 2 or 3 years, I mean, 2 or 3 days after Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
Then all of a sudden we're going to go to war in Europe and in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
So Hitler didn't have to do that. And so the question is, if Hitler did not declare war on the United States, then what? What would we do?
Mm-hmm. Even
Now, if you
though.
go back to World War One, same thing. U.S. did not want to enter World War One. Woodrow Wilson was president at that time,
Mhm.
and he just didn't want to go.
Mhm.
And so you had, the stalemate in Europe and thousands of being killed in trench warfare,
Mhm.
allies and others.
Mhm.
And we're not, Woodrow Wilson was plain, we're not going.
Mhm.
We're not going to do that.
Mhm.
And then the U.S. Army, by the way, uh, General Pershing down in Alabama, I mean, El Paso, Texas, Woodrow Wilson decides to send him into Mexico after Pancho Villa. And what
Mhm.
happened there is that Pancho Villa put it in order in a New Mexico gun shop
Mhm.
for, I think it was $10,000 in rifles, from gun manufacturers in the U.S.
Mhm.
Then Woodrow Wilson puts a ban out. No, you can't sell those guns to Pancho Villa.
Mhm.
Pancho Villa sends some of his guys into that town in New Mexico. I think it was Columbus, New Mexico.
Mhm.
He sends his people there to say, if you're not going to sell us the guns, give us our $10,000 back.
Oh,
Oh,
that's.
no, no, we can't do that.
Uh-huh.
So they shoot up the town. Pancho Villa, they kill several Americans, including some American soldiers that just happened to be in town.
Mhm.
And so I don't know, I think it was 9 or 10 Americans were killed.
Mhm.
And Woodrow Wilson then decided, and of course they go back across the border back into Mexico.
Mhm.
And Woodrow Wilson decides to appoint General Pershing
Mhm.
and his army stationed in El Paso, Texas,
Mhm.
which included a lieutenant named George Patton, who
Mhm.
was in charge of putting shoes on the horses and the
Mhm.
cavalry. Anyway, he sends them into Mexico, go get Pancho Villa and,
Mhm.
bring them back dead or alive, whatever. So they go and they called it the Mexican Expeditionary Force. And it was nicknamed, I think, the Mexican Retaliatory Force or something. But
Mhm.
anyway, they go into Mexico and they go up and chase Pancho Villa and his people up into the mountains and remote areas. And they get in a couple of gunfights. They don't get Pancho Villa.
Mhm.
Um, they do kill a couple of local Mexican townspeople.
Mhm.
And they're in Mexico 18 months. And finally, Woodrow Wilson says, okay, he saves face. He pulls them out of Mexico so that
Mhm.
he can send them to Europe for World War One.
Mhm.
So General Pershing and the whole group that had gone to Mexico get pulled back, get transported to New York to take ships over to Europe,
Mhm.
to Paris, to fight in World War One.
Wow.
So that's what happens there. And then
Mhm.
Pershing, with enough extra Americans, it kind of tilts the scales in Europe to
Mhm.
make the Western countries, the anti-Germany countries, um, basically get to a point where they're ahead. And and then negotiations lead to not Germany surrendering, but to an armistice. And on my birthday, November 11th,
Mhm.
1918, the parties sign the armistice and it ends the fighting. It doesn't end the war, but it pretty much, Germany's pretty much giving up and saying, okay, we're going to sign the armistice, no more fighting.
Oh, what a story. How can you remember all these dates and names? It's amazing. You mentioned that your birthday is November 11th.
Yeah.
Oh,
Veterans Day or
happy.
Armistice Day. The actual original title of that day was named after the day in Europe that they signed the armistice to
Oh.
stop the fighting in World War One. And that treaty was signed the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month,
Really?
November 11, 11/11/18.
We
That's when
have,
they,
wow, that's amazing. It's we have 8 ones put together. November 11th, 11 hours, and happy early birthday.
thank you.
Um, so, so it's next Tuesday, actually,
Yeah.
1 week from today. Well, happy birthday, and
I
thank you
think
so
we'll be spending it together here, right?
much. Right. So, we're gonna hear some story about your story, your history on your birthday, maybe. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so
during
much.
a blizzard in 1951, I was born in Chicago, November 11th. And my
Uh,
mother talked about that all the time, that it was an extreme early winter blizzard in Chicago when I was born. Because I was born in Chicago. They lived in south suburbs, but I was born at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, downtown Chicago.
it's your hometown, Chicago. It's a beautiful city. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's yeah, next week you're gonna talk more about that. All right. So about our tariffs, wool. Some people said that's tariffs wool. Um Secretary Scott Bensent announced that he's going to sit in the front row during this week, right? This week or next week, Supreme Court tariffs hearing. So they're gonna make a decision. It's a big day. So he said, actually, quote unquote, he said, I'm actually going to sit hopefully in the front row and have a ringside seat. They can say whatever they want. I'm here to emphasize that this is a economic emergency. So this is a big issue. So what do you predict the result?
Well, I think
Well,
I would predict that the tariffs, what they're really going to be arguing about is the procedure to establish who can do it. Does it take
mhm,
congressional authority? Can the president do it and all of that? And I think that, that's going to be the issue. And
mhm,
I don't know. I'm hoping that obviously the Supreme Court says the president can do it, emergency or no emergency, because all the other countries do it to us.
mhm,
So, you're leveling the playing field. So if other countries charge us 10 or 20%, we can put a tariff on their stuff for 10 or 20%.
mhm,
And up until really Trump, it hasn't been done. We've paid whatever these countries want us to pay in the extra taxes and then don't charge them anything for what they sell in the United States.
right. Well,
So
yeah, when I take a look at this question, I'm just thinking that the tariffs, how much tariffs we should charge to foreign countries, it should be the right to the government, right? It's
yeah,
not
and at the minimum, what Trump is basically saying is that we should charge them what they charge us.
right.
If they don't sell their stuff into our country, if they make cars, if you look at Europe, the European cars, Mercedes and BMW and Porsche and all of those, if they're putting huge tariffs to sell those in the United States, extra taxes, then if we're selling cars in Europe, we should have tariffs on them
Mhm,
and same amount. And really, that's been what's been going on now in the negotiations with China.
mhm,
The PRC is basically charging their level of tariffs, and
mhm.
Trump's basically saying, well, we're going to do the same or more.
Mm-mm. Right, right. So, in your opinion, tariffs are belongs to the law, or it's a kind of policy. If it is a law to rule the tariffs, and it's the rights is to the Congress. If it's a policy, the rights is to the government. It should be the policy, right? How much you
Yeah, and I
charge?
think I think no one's arguing that the U.S. government can't put tariffs. They're
Yeah.
just basically arguing, does the president have the power to do it on his own, with or without Congress? So, in other words, if you have a treaty with a foreign country, we ratify a treaty, the Senate has to confirm it. So the president can't just sign a treaty and say, okay, that's the current law. It
Right.
has to be ratified in the United States Senate. And
Okay.
so that may be part of the argument with tariffs is, yeah, we can put tariffs and level the amount of tariffs that we charge them to the level that they charge us.
Right,
But
right,
can the president do it on his own without congressional authority? So that I
right.
think is going to be one of the bigger arguments.
So we have to prove that the tariffs is not treaty. So if the tariffs is not treaty, then the president do not need the grade from the
Well,
Congress.
it's like a parallel situation. If certain policies, theoretically,
Hmm.
president can't declare war, Congress is supposed to declare war. Then
Right,
they
right.
don't. And they say,
Mhm,
well, we're not going to exercise that power. And the president, war after war has been begun. I
mhm,
think Franklin Roosevelt on December 8, 1941, is
mhm,
the last time a president asked Congress declare war
mhm,
or acknowledge that a state of war exists between the United States and the Empire of Japan. So
mhm,
he's at least in Congress in a joint session making that speech.
mhm,
But you look at the war since, uh, whether it's Korea, that was kind of a police action, they refer to it, not a full war. And some of the other ones since, more recent history, our invasion of Iraq, president didn't declare war
mhm.
against Iraq. He just basically,
Right,
said that Congress should let him go in, and they kind of acquiesced and said, "Yeah, well, okay, go ahead."
right,
So, so we'll see. We'll see how Supreme Court interprets what's the current situation.
right. Okay. So, but this is very important issue. Hopefully they will have a favor Trump administration. And also about Nancy Pelosi. I don't want to talk about her, but I have to talk about her. She just announced that she won't seek re-election of 2026. Thank God. But she has her own person wants to push into the federal level, which is Warner. He's the senator of California, which is the worst one, the worst one. Um, well, I don't want to talk about him, but he's the worst one. But anyhow, during the announcement of her not secret election on 2026, Nancy Pelosi just attacking President Trump using the most disgusting words. And she said, President Trump is just a vile creature and the worst thing on the face of the earth. That's her own language in front of so many millions of audience. So she's not only, in my opinion, she's only not only insulting President Trump, but also insulting over 80 million American voters. Why are we allowing this to happen? And where is the Democrats Party headed to in the coming years? She is she's one crazy. And she
Well, freedom of speech. If she wants to call Trump names or say, all these things about him or other issues, first of all, a lot of people think that she's mentally ill. A lot of people
I
also think she's an alcoholic, and that usually when she has these outbursts, she's half drunk or totally drunk.
Mhm,
So that could be. But I think that, for the country, it's almost consider the source.
mhm,
Before you get too upset about what she says, consider the person that it's coming, whose mouth it's coming out of.
mhm,
And I think that's what most people are saying is that she's crazy, she's drunk, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She and her husband have made millions of dollars over the years improperly through insider trading,
mhm,
inside information about the stock market, and then they go buy or sell whatever stocks they have.
mhm,
So there's a lot uh, to argue about her.
mhm,
What she says about Trump or what she thinks, she probably does Trump a favor by doing that
mhm,
because everybody knows, how diminished she is.
mhm, mhm. That's
So,
right.
that's like Biden calling Trump names. Are you
Mhm,
kidding?
mhm. Right,
Why don't
right.
we go find some more mentally incompetent people and have them, actually we do, because a lot of those mentally incompetent people are voting Democratic. And
Mhm.
that's why New York, Chicago, LA, that's why these cities are in the shape that they're in if they're run by Democrats.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, you mentioned other. I think it's a big issue. Is it's a criminal. I think it's because she got lots of money, and her husband, which is against the law. So it looks like so far she is above the law.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to her.
she's above the law.
Right, right. And also, Dick Cheney died today. So,
Right.
yeah, do you have anything to say about this man and his daughter?
Well, I don't have a very high opinion of either one of them.
Hmm.
Start with Dick Cheney.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Probably people have already forgotten. When he was vice president, he had his assistant, Scooter Libby, divulge the name of a CIA officer or agent. Her name is Valerie Plame,
Hmm.
and she had been conducting CIA business in a couple of Western African countries. And
Hmm.
some of those projects were top secret. People didn't know it was the CIA behind it,
Hmm.
and she was doing that. And Dick Cheney, Scooter Libby, they put her name out publicly
Oh,
as a CIA officer, Valerie Plame. Now, this is in Bush's second term.
uh-huh.
And a special prosecutor was appointed to look at that case. And the
Hmm.
special prosecutor was Fitzgerald, who was the U.S. attorney in Chicago at the time, Northern District of Illinois, who is now Comey's attorney, Fitzgerald.
Oh.
So at the time, Fitzgerald, and I knew him when he was in charge of organized crime prosecutions in the Eastern District of New York, at a time when Comey was Western District of New York. They were both U.S. attorneys.
Mm-mm.
And so anyway, Fitzgerald, um, he gets appointed to investigate what Cheney did. Now, what's interesting is that this is a situation where you have an accusation against the second highest ranking Republican in the country.
Mhm.
And the president, they appoint Fitzgerald as special prosecutor. And then when they do that, I think they assigned something like 50 FBI agents to work for Fitzgerald to investigate the case. And
Mhm.
so what happens is they investigate, and Fitzgerald, with his background prosecuting organized crime in New York, similar strategy. You get the lower fish first, and you get that person to decide to cooperate and testify against the higher person, and then on up the chain.
Mhm.
So they go after Scooter Libby and they get him, and he's found guilty. He's
Mhm.
disbarred, and so now he's no longer, but he's working for Cheney. Scooter Libby publicly says at the time, I don't care what happens. I'm never going to jail, ever, never. And so basically, that tells the government that he'll testify against Cheney to keep himself out of jail. So, in any event, what happens then is President Bush steps in and basically doesn't give him a pardon, which means then he's not guilty and he can keep his law license. So he doesn't do that, but he commutes the sentence, which means he's still guilty. He
Mhm.
still loses his law, the ability to practice law, but he will not go to jail.
Oh,
And since he won't go to jail, he won't testify against Cheney, and that's the end of that.
okay.
So So Fitzgerald was the attorney investigating that case with about 50 agents during, the presidency, during the time Cheney's sitting vice president.
Mhm.
So
So George Bush saved him
yeah,
by,
commuted
yeah,
the sentence.
yeah,
Well, he not only saved him, he saved Cheney
yeah, right, right.
because he would have testified that Cheney instructed him to put out the information about Valerie Plame and
Mhm.
giving up her identity publicly, almost a treasonous act.
So
Serious, a
why?
serious felony.
I know. So, but why Dick Cheney did that? Why he wants her name be public?
Because he didn't like what she had done. Uh, she had contradicted him. Part of the reason that we invaded Iraq was
Mhm.
we were claiming that Saddam Hussein was importing yellow cake
Yeah.
uranium
Uh-huh.
from Western Africa.
Right.
And so that was, so she, her husband, the former ambassador, they go on a special mission
Mhm,
and basically prove that that was happening.
mhm, mhm.
And that's why. So they wanted to get her and give her pretty much ruin her career, give
Right.
her identity because she had a number,
Mhm,
as a station chief in West Africa, she had a number of operations that she had put in
mhm, mhm.
while working for the CIA where people didn't have any idea that she was a CIA
Mhm.
person.
Wow.
And so once that was divulged, all those different operations had to be terminated. People pulled out so they wouldn't
Right.
get killed. Very, very dangerous situation. And that was Dick Cheney to get even with her and her husband.
Mhm.
So, and then Bush, what's interesting about that, people don't talk about is that because Cheney begged Bush
Mhm,
to pardon Scooter Libby, and Bush wouldn't do it. And they almost never spoke together again. President, vice president,
mhm.
then had a blood feud for the rest of the Bush presidency. Cheney
Wow.
wouldn't talk to him. Cheney hated George W. Bush because he wouldn't do that at his request to
Mhm,
pardon Scooter Libby.
mhm. He
So
actually pardoned him for not going to jail, but he did not pardon him from the
it's not a pardon. They call it commuting the sentence.
community, the sentence. Okay.
So basically, Scooter Libby is still guilty,
Mhm, right.
still lost his law license, all of that, but he's not going to go to prison. And since he's not going to prison and he's guaranteed his freedom, he won't testify and cooperate against Dick Cheney.
So Dick Cheney think that he is above Bush because he think Bush has to do whatever he wants him to do. If Bush is not follow his order
When
and
when Bush got elected,
right.
he was trying to figure out who should he pick to be vice president.
Uh-huh.
So he put Dick Cheney in charge of a small committee, find who I should pick. And
Oh,
Cheney comes back and says, pick
me,
me.
me,
And that's how he got to be vice president.
oh, that's an interesting story. So,
Yeah.
something, thank you so much for sharing this interesting history with us. And from that, I see something, some very similar thing among in Cheney's family. And think about what Liz Cheney has done in January 6th committee. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, when she's on the committee, Nancy Pelosi appoints an unlawful committee. It's not
Right,
really a full committee. But in any
right.
event,
Uh-huh.
they bring in witnesses and take witness statements and all of that.
Mhm.
And basically, those statements they can't find later.
Yeah,
The
right.
Democrats run this committee. They wouldn't allow, I think at the time, the Republicans were trying to appoint certain people to be on it, guys like Jim Jordan, other
Mhm,
powerful, well-respected Republicans.
mhm,
And Pelosi said, no, they can't be on the committee. So
mhm,
they put on, I think, Adam Kinzinger, which is, basically a closet Democrat,
mhm,
and Liz Cheney, another
mhm,
one. And
mhm,
so basically the committee's rigged,
mhm.
and that's how it came to be. And Liz Cheney was a big part of that. Now it's
Right.
interesting. Later, Liz Cheney is a member of Congress. The next time she runs for re-election in Wyoming,
Mhm.
she loses by the biggest amount anybody has ever lost in Wyoming.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how little respect her own people had for her.
I think people from Wyoming has the smart mind. It knows maybe better than New York people. We'll see New York people do the right thing when you have chance. Okay, so the last question regarding the topic of today is the death penalty. It seems like a little bit off topic, but it's been a question in my mind for a long time. So, what do you think about the death penalty? Should American restore the death penalty? And do you think it's possible for like Democrats ruled states to restore the death penalty?
I think it's possible.
Mhm,
Uh, it depends on the crime that someone has been convicted of.
mhm,
Now, my personal philosophy about the death penalty
mhm,
is that if a person's convicted, let's say, of murder, and it's a death penalty in that state, like Utah right now,
Mhm.
If this guy that's going to go on trial for shooting Charlie Kirk,
Mhm.
it's a death penalty allowed state.
Mhm.
And so what they're basically saying is that if the jury finds beyond a reasonable doubt that he murdered Charlie Kirk, then they can recommend the death penalty. Now, over the years, there have been so many cases that later further investigation showed, especially later as DNA evidence was, the science was further developed. There have been so many cases that later they find out that someone has been sentenced to 30 years in prison or was given the death penalty and later found to be innocent.
Mhm.
So, in my opinion, proof beyond a reasonable doubt
Mhm.
is not enough for death. For
Mhm.
life prison, okay. But for the death penalty, I think it should be proof beyond any doubt, not a reasonable doubt,
Mhm.
no doubt.
Mhm.
So if they can prove a case to that extent that there's no doubt, no
Mhm.
ifs, ands, or maybes, that person committed that act
Mhm.
and met all of the criteria
Mhm.
of a planned murder,
Okay.
then then they can issue the death penalty and should.
Sure.
For those situations, they should.
Right. So, in reality, is that almost cannot be made for the absolutely no adult in the case. So, what's the standard of the absolutely no adult of the case?
Well, if you have eyewitnesses, if you have, let's say, if you've seen the videos from 1963 where Jack Ruby
Uh-huh.
kills Oswald,
Uh-huh.
there's no doubt. You can't say somebody else shot him
Mm-mm-mm.
or he died of food poisoning in the hospital, some other thing. You see in the video Ruby extend the gun into the abdomen of Oswald, pull the trigger. Oswald coupled over and groaned out loud.
Mm-mm.
There's no doubt Ruby shot him and
Mm-mm.
killed him. No
Mm-mm.
doubt.
Mm-mm.
So there's not a reasonable doubt. There's no doubt.
Right, right,
So
right.
if you have the old smoking gun, if you have that kind of a case, then to me that should qualify for the death penalty and be beyond argument
Mm-hmm.
that, well, maybe he didn't do it, or maybe he was framed, or maybe the evidence wasn't analyzed properly. Um, and so that's my belief. That's
Right.
not the law,
Mm-hmm.
but
From your experience and then yeah, the cases that you're dealing with. And
right.
the last question, Tom, is you mentioned that some people just being go to the death penalty and they died, and then years later and find out that whoops, got a wrong person. So this is something that we can't change. It's so sad. Is this kind of situations pretty normal when we talk about death penalty?
I think in a lot of cases that they don't have the smoking gun. It's kind of the evidence is coincidental. You can convict somebody of a crime
Right,
on coincidental evidence,
right, right, right.
but that shouldn't be used for the death penalty.
Okay.
Again, because there's always going to be an element of this person probably did it.
Mm-hmm.
We have no reasonable doubt to think that he didn't do it. But
Mm-hmm.
in the case of executing somebody, I think it should go beyond. It should go to the next level of proof beyond any doubt, not a reasonable doubt, no doubt.
Right. Yeah, the case of Oklahoma, his name is McVee, right? Net, what is his name?
McVeigh, yeah,
McVee, yeah. He's got a death penalty, right? If I
right,
remember correctly. So his case is a very strong case. That is no doubt.
right.
Is is that the standard?
It was a no doubt case, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So he ended up being, at the time in the U.S. federal prison system, it may still be the same.
Mhm.
Executions were done in the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, and
Um,
so that's where he was sent to be executed, and that's where he was executed, Terre Haute.
right. Okay.
Now later, when I become the special agent in charge at one point in my career for 2 years of the Indianapolis division of the FBI, which put me in charge of all of the FBI in the state of Indiana,
Mhm.
the warden of the prison working for the Department of Justice, Bureau of Prisons, invited me to Terre Haute to tour the prison and also the execution facility where they would electrocute people that were sentenced to death, like McVeigh.
Ah, all right. What do you feel about that? It's
Well, not much. I think that I think, in my opinion, justice was carried out, and that's how they did it. So it was interesting from a
Mhm.
trivia standpoint to see the facility and see how they administered it and how they electrocuted somebody and
Yeah,
all of that.
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so we do need to have a death penalty, but we need to be very, very careful about who we put the death penalty because we respect life and we respect the fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what happened with McVeigh also politically was, like right now you have so many people that support any liberal that kills somebody. That's okay. Like
Right.
in the case of Charlie Kirk,
Hmm.
that so many say, well, Charlie Kirk deserved to die, and so what? It's no problem. But in the case of McVeigh, there was a movement in the U.S. kind of going against the federal government. So you
Hmm.
had these militia groups running around and doing that, and McVeigh envisioned himself to be a hero among these groups. And the mistake he made is when the bomb exploded on the Murrah building in downtown Oklahoma City. On the first floor, there were several hundred children
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
daycare center,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he killed many, many children, and then he lost all political support. So these
That,
militia groups said, no, 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 we're going against the federal government or against the army or one party or another party. We
mhm,
don't want to kill children.
right.
And so that ruined his chance to be a hero with the
Mhm,
militia groups.
mhm. That's the bottom line. You don't do that. No
Right.
matter
He
what's the reason.
he crossed the line. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so very much. We have some friends just say hi, say thank you, Tom, and then Zizi said like your chat all the time. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure, thank you. And then I'll translate into Chinese as soon as possible. And again, happy early birthday.
Thank you. Well, I'll
Thank,
see you next week on my birthday. So,
see you next week. Thank you,
okay.
Tom. Take care.
Bye bye. You
Bye-bye.
too.